Now, I don't know if you will find my Dogman encounter to be frightening or particularly scary, but for me and my wife, it was. You see, back in 2018, we had just moved to Weatherford, Texas. The property I bought sat on 23 acres of land, and I absolutely loved it. But as I started to explore the area around me and getting to know my neighbors much better, I realized on the back inside of my property, beyond the fence line, was this other massive piece of property, and no one seemed to know who the landowner was. So I take it upon myself to go and explore, climb over the fence, and start looking around. And that's when things started to get extremely weird. Imagine a scene. You climb the fence, you walk into the woods, and you climb the fence 50 yards, and then you come into this wide open clearing. I mean, a perfectly manicured circle in the middle of the woods. When you go beyond that clearing, you come to another 50, 60 yards worth of woods, and then another perfectly cleared circle in the woods. I'm standing there finding myself completely and totally intrigued with the fact that someone would take the time to do something like this. So I start to work my way to the east. As I'm working eastward, I go through about 50, 60 yards of woods, and there's another clearing. Now pause right here and let me say this to you. Back then, when this happened, I had no clue that Dogman existed. Knew nothing about a Dogman. Alright, let's pick up right here. I leave that property, come back home, me and my wife have dinner, everything is fine, no problems, absolute perfection. 2 days later, I see my neighbor. He says, hey, we don't go over there on that property. So now he and I are talking, and I'm asking him, well, who owns this land? He says he doesn't know. And I'm asking him, well, listen, who owns this land? He goes on to tell me that not only he doesn't know who owns it, but none of the other neighbors know who owns that land. Listen, call me naive, call me stupid, call me whatever the hell you want. But in my mind, I was just curious because I'd never seen anything like this. So again, I cross the fence and go on to the land. This time I start working my way towards the west, just to see if it was all the same. Well, as I'm working my way westwards through these woods, I come to a clearing, and I see what looks like this coyote puppy laying next to a tree. Now, in my mind, no big deal. It's a coyote pup. I see it laying around. I don't see the parents. I'm not worried about it. I keep on going on about my business. And sure enough, no matter how far you went in any direction, it was that same symmetry. 50, 60, no more than 70 yards of woods, and then these clear-cut circles. And I'm thinking to myself, why would someone do something like this? What is the purpose of this? Now I'm working my way back home, and I get to that area where that pup is laying down by the tree, and it's still there laying down. And I'm saying to myself, okay, maybe this thing is dead. Innocently, I grab a rock, toss it in a direction, and I can't throw that well, so I miss. I pick up another rock. This time my goal is to throw the rock and hit the tree right above where it is. But nope, that rock takes a trajectory that makes it land and hit this thing right in the rib cage. Now understand, I'm no more than 20, 25 yards away, and if you ever been punched in the chest or punched someone else in the chest, you know how it sounds, that kind of hollow, like doom sound. That's the sound that I heard. This thing rolls over and stands up on two legs and starts to look around, and then it spots me. Looks down at that rock, then looks at me. Now pause right here for a moment in the story, because right then and there, it had not registered to me mentally that this thing was standing up on two legs. I mean, I saw it standing up on two legs, but it hadn't registered in my mind that it was actually standing up on two legs. I don't know if that makes sense to you, because it didn't make much sense to me. It was almost as if my brain was not comprehending what it was seeing. Like my brain was telling me it's on all fours, but I'm looking at it standing up on its hind two legs. It looks at me, turns its head, starts to growl, then turns around and takes off running. Now I'm pretty sure you're saying to yourself what I was saying to myself in that very moment, which is, that was some weird shit. So now I'm hurrying to get off of this property. I climb over the fence and head on home, and everything is quiet for the next 24 hours. However, that night after, my wife and I are sitting in the living room watching TV, Matter of fact, I could tell you what we were watching. We were watching the Barbecue Championship on Netflix when it sounds like something jumps on the roof. And when I say jump on the roof, imagine a 200, 300-pound person literally jumping up and down on your roof. That's what it sounds like. You hear it hit the back side of the house, land on the roof, and then scurry up to the peak of the roof, and then down towards the front side of the roof, right above where my wife and I are watching television. And I need you to understand, there is no mistaking what we heard and then what happened next. There was absolutely no mistaking what this was, because we hear this growling sound being projected down on top of our heads. Now, I don't know if you've ever experienced having a sound directed downward at you. It was almost as if someone had taken a subwoofer speaker and they were holding it over our heads and playing a growling noise. Listen to me when I tell you this. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. The hairs on my arm felt like they started to lay down. I had this feeling, this strong urge to completely and totally urinate on myself. Looking over at my wife, she's frozen in place with that dead eye stare. You know how it is when you stare forward and you focus on your hearing? That's how she is. She's stuck there staring forward, and you can tell that her audible senses are being completely and totally overridden by this sound, just like mine's were. Then I hear this thing move towards the front of the house on the roof. We hear the thud of it landing on the ground, and now I want to get up and move, and I can't. I never found myself in any situation where my body did not work. It was almost as if the signals coming from my brain were not going to my legs and to my arms. I was stuck in place. And that's when we both saw it. And I need you to understand something. We out in the country in Weatherford, Texas. Do we have blinds? Yes. But we typically keep the blinds open. Do we have curtains? Yes. But the way my wife has our curtains arranged, they slope down and then they hook on the sides, leaving this kind of triangular pattern where the curtains are open. Why? Because we live in a country. Nobody comes out here to bother us. Ooh, boy, let me tell you, that night, I really, really wish that I could kind of rewind time and close those blinds before the sun went down, because what we saw looking at us through that window was absolutely terrifying, and I can describe it to you unlike anybody else can ever describe it to you, because I saw this giant eyeball the size of the cup coaster that was sitting on the table in front of me, yellow with a huge, gigantic black pupil the size of my thumb. And I've listened to some people tell their Dogman encounters about how Dogman was looking at them, but no. I don't know if those people are telling the truth, because let me tell you something. They don't look head on at you, like stare you down like a human being. No. This thing was looking through one eye at us. It made a point of putting one eye right at the window and looking at us with that one freaking eye, making sure it made contact. Then it started to slowly turn its head, and you saw the snout, and then you saw the tip of the snout, and then you saw the other eye as it adjusts its entire head to fit into that space to show itself to me and my wife. It was intentionally showing itself to us. And this entire time, I couldn't move. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying to you, man. I felt absolutely helpless. My wife is sitting right there next to me. I can't move. There's nothing that I could do to defend this woman because my brain is not working. It lets out another growl. And this time, I feel it in my stomach and in my intestines. And then it starts to breathe on the window, these hard, huffing, puffing breaths. Looking over at my wife, she's now laid out on the sofa, convulsing. It looks at me, looks at her, looks at me, and then looks at her, and then turns and goes away. Now let me stop right here and let me say this to you. I heard people tell stories about how the Dogman is like a lion and it projects these vibrations that freeze their prey, and then they eat them and they kill them. I don't know nothing about none of that. I don't know if it's true. I don't know what is false. I'm not saying any of that is true or false. All I'm telling you is what we experienced. My wife was sitting there having seizures and convulsions. I don't know if it was because an adrenaline dump. I don't know if it was because she was overwhelmed with adrenaline. I don't know what it was. But I know when I was finally able to move and I started tending to her, she was sitting there shaking. I'm talking about eyes rolled in the back of her head, shaking. Listen, I've told this story to other folks and they didn't believe me, and they told me if I was in that situation, I would have grabbed my gun and I would have shot it. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't have shot it. I couldn't move.